All right. I am very excited to have the founders of Takadao, Morrad Irsane and Sharene join me for this podcast. I've had some great interactions with them in the past. They had attended some of my events, also had an opportunity to meet them at CoinDesk Consensus last year. And they're doing some amazing things in the world of blockchain as well as insurance. I think we're going to have a great conversation today. Sharene, Morrad, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brother Tanvi, for having us. It's a pleasure to be on.
Yeah, thank you for all this. Happy to be there.
Yeah, I was really looking forward to this. To benefit our viewers, I was wondering if you all can set the stage and tell us a little bit, and you can get as detailed as you like on what Takadao does.
Shall I go first? Well, Takadao is we are a technology company that builds protocols that enables community-based insurance and really community-owned insurance. Now, to actually properly highlight what that means, I will illustrate the product that we have right now today, which is called TheLifeDAO. Now, this is an association of people who've come together to, number one, protect one another, and this is where the insurance bit comes in, as well as to grow their wealth together. And what is so unique and so special about what we're doing at Takadao and what we're doing at TheLifeDAO is that this is not the traditional situation where you, the customer, have a relationship with an insurance company and you guys are betting against each other, because that's what essentially insurance is. It's the customer is taking a bet against the insurance company and vice versa. What we're doing is we're saying, well, let's take insurance back to what it once was, which is people coming together to protect and help one another. And so we built the technology that enables us to do this in today's super fast paced, super high scale, super massive global age to allow and to enable this kind of peer-to-peer insurance at scale for global citizens. That is kind of a very high level of what we do at Takadao and TheLifeDAO.
Anything you wanted to add, Brother Morrad?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. When we look actually at the way insurance was at the beginning of, I would say, even the, early civilization, humanities and stuff like that. The only thing that people had back then was each other's back. The life actually, when you look back at the nomadic life of the travelers in the desert, it was a very risky life. The merchant actually, they were crossing desert, empty desert, okay, from Yemen all the way to Syria and everything. So you can imagine the really tough condition people were facing. So the early origin of insurance, I would say, was actually this community-based type of insurance where merchants, they knew the risk they were taking, crossing this desert with their loaded camel full of goods. And they knew that maybe something would happen. They were certain that something would happen along the way. The camel dying, them maybe dying, or maybe the goods being stolen by other people in a very hostile type of environment they were living in. So what they decided to do basically is to put resources together and agree on that if anything were going to happen to anybody of them, when they would arrive to the city and sell their goods, they will compensate on anybody's loss. And that's exactly what was the origin of insurance, or what we call it, muta'awun, community coming together and helping one another. This concept has been taken back by Deloitte, and as we know, Deloitte use it for their own, merchant during the fleeting and the boating industry, and that they were, So basically, this concept was also the same origin. So there were no profit-seeking interest in it. It was just a compensation being paid by the community if anything were going to happen, and that's exactly what we're doing. We're bringing back this concept to life.
This is fascinating. This actually, I never realized that there is a history, right? You normally look at insurance as, probably going back, a couple of hundred or more years. Do you have an idea how long back this practice has been around for traders?
So if we trace back, it was pre-Islamic even. It was pre-Islamic that this concept were in place already. And as a matter of fact, during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, it was also something that was happening, and that was a tradition that the Arabs were also doing. And he didn't oppose it and didn't, went against it basically. So he let it be. And actually, during the time of the Khalifat Umar, basically it was encouraged even. It was something that he put in place in order for people to be able to do. So the concept of muta'awun, working together, helping one another in case of hardship. So this is the origin of the takaful concept, I would say.
I just
I
want to
wanted
clarify this
to
a little more. Okay. Go ahead, please, Sister Shariah.
I wanted to add some color to that because the history of the insurance industry is actually fascinating. So I think insurance, the way we know it today, would have been called a different name way back when. But it's always been something that's inherent. Like, why do human beings get together in communities? Why did they become families? Families become communities. Communities become little villages. Villages become towns. Because there was always this idea that if you band together collectively, that's how you become strong. And that's how you help each other. That's how you protect one another. So then, you fast forward to a more kind of recent, modern way of humanity where people are settling in towns and they're trading. Then insurance becomes something that had a very practical financial aspect to it. And so now they came together to protect one another, not just say, we fight against some neighboring tribe together, but that financially protect one another. So if something happens to you, we give you money. Something happens to me, you give me money. Then it evolved that way. And then that was the history of insurance for all humanity, not just for the Muslims, by the way, but for all humanity, all races, every society around the world for the longest time. It was always about people who had the shared interests. So the earliest examples were the tradesmen's association. So the iron workers, for example, very dangerous job. So they said, we will all band together. If something happens, we'll take care of one another's families. So it always started with these groups of people who had some kind of shared interest or some kind of shared risk that they identified and say, we'll help each other against this risk. Now, that goes on for the longest time until somewhere around the 19th century. And what happens at that point? First of all, the people started moving to towns, okay? So they started to cluster together in a very unprecedented way. It never used to be so many people, high density in a specific area. That was one move. Then there was the Liars of London, which kind of wiped out most of London, all right? And then there was a particular event, which was the invention of actuarial sciences, or rather the development of actuarial sciences, which is basically fancy mathematics and statistics, which then caused people to, which then caused the insurance industry to develop in the way it has developed today. Now, what happened? So with actuarial sciences, people figured out, hey, we can accurately or pretty accurately predict the likelihood of an event happening. And when that was the case, that now they were like, well, now we can take a bet against or for that event happening. And this is what happens. This is when insurance went from we're helping each other, we're protecting one another, to the modern day insurance industry, where I have money, I am smart, I know how to calculate statistics and the likelihood of something happening. I'm going to take a bet against you whether this event will happen or not. And that's really this happens, towards the late 19th century, and the early 20th century, it started to really, really accelerate because they figured out, hey, we can make so much money betting in this way. So essentially we're saying, hey, that is a terrible idea. Because look what insurance has become. Insurance has become, for me, I call this a casino model. Insurance has left half the world uninsured because it's not profitable to insure those guys. Insurance has led to things like, Luigi Mangione, gunning down the CEO of United Health in broad daylight on the streets of New York, and 41% of Americans saying, maybe he deserved it. Insurance has led to California wildfires and people standing on their front lawn trying to put out the fires themselves because the insurance company canceled their homeowners insurance. This is what the casino model of insurance today has led us to. And this is why we need to take it back to what it was, which was people helping people.
Brilliant. This was brilliant. I did want to clarify because history fascinates me, perhaps not when I was, a lot younger, but I think history is important because what you study in the past could sometimes indicate what could happen in the future. When you spoke about the group insurance for the traders, in that scenario, Brother Morrad, if God forbid a caravan would face calamity, then the rest of the community would compensate partly. Was that a common practice?
Yeah, exactly. So since they understood the complexity and the difficulties in the desert wildlife, and all those events were going to happen no matter what, being attacked, camel maybe dying on the way, losing your goods. So all this was understood. So they would commonly agree on supporting one another with any kind of loss. Okay, and these things has been also done by the Lloyd. So imagine the boat in the middle of the sea would potentially fail to arrive to the port. So what would they do? is to dump quickly goods from any kind of merchants, and then they will tally later on, say, your goods have been lost, and the boat has been saved, eventually being able to reach to the shore, and then they will compensate anybody. And that was agreed. That was agreed on. And as I say, maybe Sharon can elaborate more on that. But during the Islamic era, they had the concept of akila and also the nutshell, basically.
Maybe losing you, Brother Morrad, for a
Yeah,
couple of
sorry.
seconds. Yeah, you're back now.
Yeah, yeah. So
So could you repeat that
imagine,
last part, please? Yeah.
yeah, during the time of Umar ibn Khattab as well, the concept of akila or also diya, so it's a blood money. So that was done also during the time of the Prophet, actually. So the tribe would put actually money aside, okay, in the event that, let's say, a tribe member would accidentally or maybe voluntarily kill another tribe member from another tribe. And if this type of incident would happen, okay, would happen, a war between people, between tribe will happen. So it's very terrible. Then it would be like maybe hundreds of men dying and so on and so forth. So to avoid this kind of issue happening among and between early Muslim tribe, the blood money diya was imposed. So you would pay blood money in order to save or to retribute the family for the killing of all the loss of a tribe member. And that actually goes back to the quote unquote, I like to say, life insurance. You kill somebody, you have to pay money in order to save your life. Okay. And that's actually something that was encouraged and everything. So this is the origin, I would say, of this community-based, helping one another, avoiding conflict, and so on and so forth. So, Sharon, you want to add up some story maybe around?
Nope.
So coming back to Takadao, this is very interesting. So as far as Takadao is concerned, community insurance where everyone participates into a pool. If someone faces hardship, then that pool will pay out a compensation to the affected individual or family. Right? Is that correct in a nutshell?
Yep. I mean, it functions very much like normal insurance from the perspective of the individual who's engaging in this. But then in the back end, the intention is extremely different. The way claims are handled is extremely different. The perspective of whether or not to pay out claims is extremely different. So if you think about the insurance, what I call the casino model, there is a disincentive for the insurance company to pay out the claim because they're in it to make money. The investors have put money in it to make money. And every time they pay out a claim, that's less money that they're making. As a matter of fact, everything you pay to the insurance company is considered their revenue, and everything they don't pay to you is considered their profit. So they're paying you a claim, they're taking it from their profit. So that's the casino model. Now, if you go back to what we want to say is a community and mutual model, the intention there is to say, well, we're mutually protecting one another. If there's any quote unquote money, profit, or what we call underwriting surplus, that really gets distributed among the members themselves. So there's no incentive to not pay claims. As a matter of fact, because you are part member and part owner, you are incentivized to take care of the other members. That change in the niyyah, we call it the intention of the fund, makes all the differences, right? Because then now you're approaching everything from a perspective of, I want to ensure the well-being of all the people in this fund, as opposed to, I want to make as much money as I can off of the people in this fund.
Yeah, see, I also wanted to add this, right? You use some examples, a lot of huge tragedy with the fires in LA. Unfortunately, nature of business is such that it's very, it's profit driven. No problem with that, but it's a very short term thinking, right? Like one or two bad quarters, and an insurance company or a Wall Street will want dramatic changes. But where I feel the system is so wrong is like a person could be paying insurance his whole life, and then one calamity and the rates go up because insurance companies want to show profitability to Wall Street, right? And I feel that is such a flawed model because it shouldn't be based just on that 1 year, right? It should look, I think, I wish there was a way it could have been looked historically, where you look at, hey, you've been paying premiums for years, right? One bad year shouldn't hurt that insurance company, right? I wish there was, maybe I'm being an idealist here, but I wish there was a world where there was that, balance, right? What are your thoughts?
I mean, this is why I don't believe that people who are in the insurance industry are evil. Not at all. I believe, however, that the system is rigged against the individual. Now, you pointed out it's a for-profit system. And the people who are operating these insurance companies, maybe, all right, if they are not as profitable as they can be or they should be, the money that is now funding them is going to go somewhere else. Opportunity costs. It's going to go to a different insurance company, or it will leave the industry altogether. It's going to go to, I don't know, buying Bitcoin or something like this. And what happens then to the insurance companies? They wind up, they close, right? Because there's no more shareholder funds to bet against the consumer. So as a result, that in that system where the insurance company is a for-profit entity is broken to begin with. As let's say the CEO of an insurance company or an employee, what do? You have no choice, because you either make that difficult thing of saying, well, I have to reduce the number of claims that I'm paying out, or I face shutting down the company, no insurance for anybody at all, or, some people get hurt, but, the majority still get insured. And that's a difficult choice to make, but the system is the problem. What we are trying to do here with Takadao and what we're trying to do with the TheLifeDAO is to rebuild this system and take away that profit incentive and bring it back to a situation where the incentive of coming together in this way is to protect one another and not to make a profit. So this is where we see the big opportunity, because it doesn't mean that if we take away the profit incentive, it doesn't mean that, by the way, Takadao is a for-profit company. It's not by any shape or form a non-profit company. However, what we do is we enable the non-profit part to take place by building the technology that enables them to do this. And it is that simple adjustment of why did you build this fund and how do you build this fund and what are the intention behind it, that makes all the difference in this particular case.
Now, going back to why you launched Takadao, I've heard you speak in the past, you and Brother Morrad, and I believe you saw hardship with someone dear to you within your network or within your community, and based on that hardship is what inspired you to launch Takadao. Could you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, so this was a family friend, and I remember the sister. She's around the same age as I am. The children were around the same age, and we were living in Ras Al Khaimah, which is an emirate in the United Arab Emirates at the time. So her husband goes to Mecca for Umrah. This is like a 24-hour drive away from where we're living at the time. And then on the way back, he went with a friend. The family was home. On the way back, the friend who was driving falls asleep. They get into a car accident. I believe they went underneath a really large truck, and the car was completely smashed, and they both died there. Right? So this is a shock. Nobody expects this. Nobody ever thinks this is going to happen to them. But it did happen. And when we learned about it, the very next day, we went to offer our support. We, meaning me and some of the other sisters in our friend group. And when I got there, what really struck me that day was that picture is still in my mind. It's so fresh. I entered the room and it was packed with people. I'm pretty sure I never seen that many people in a small enclosed area before. And they were all there to offer support. They were all there to help her. They were all there they brought money, they brought food, they brought gifts for the children. They brought, anything they could. And that struck me then and there. And I thought to myself, look, when something bad happens to you, an insurance company isn't going to cover it. The government, sending a social worker in isn't going to cover it. You actually need ongoing support. You actually need people around you to do more than just give you money. You need moral support. You need advice. You need just somebody to hold your hand. You need somebody to take the kids for a day. You need the entire community. And that stayed with me, and I was like, hey, this is what we're missing. We become this society where we're so commercialized, we buy everything, right? We even buy support. That we've just been disconnected from the community. So that really the larger impetus for me is to rebuild these community things, but on a basis where people can trust one another. Because we've also grown into a society where scams are rampant. There's so many, and when you get scammed is at a really high scale. So how do you rebuild trust? And how do you rebuild those community bonds? And so this is our effort to do this. And the best way we thought to start was to solve these very pervasive problems, especially for Muslims, which is that we cannot get insured as Muslims globally. Like pretty much everywhere in the world that you go, and I've lived in many different parts of the world, insurance is haram, right? There's only a select few countries in the world where you can actually get Sharia-compliant insurance. And that is the foundation of community at the end of the day.
Go ahead.
Yes, no, that's a very powerful story. In fact, it a little emotional for me too, because especially when you said that community aspect, right? People showing up with food, support, maybe even money. When we were relatively new in the Bay Area, my dad, was very ill, And it was very heartwarming to see how the community showed up, right? Same thing with the food. And alhamdulillah, he had good
Inshallah.
medical care, but, just that moral support. And the reason I say that is sometimes our faith is, in the Western world at least, is misunderstood. But people don't realize, the family values, Islamic values, and the faith, right? And it's beautiful to see how you've used a personal experience to build a solution that inshallah will God willingly will benefit millions all over the world, or if not hundreds of millions. I want to switch to
Inshallah.
Brother Morrad with a question. Now, it's never easy building a fintech startup. Building a fintech startup with the Islamic element, probably a lot more complicated. What are some of the biggest challenges that you have faced as entrepreneurs, Brother Morrad, and or continue to face, and how have you overcome some of those? This could be probably a longer discussion, but maybe you could pick the top one or two and give us an idea.
First of all, building a startup is always a challenge. So you try to solve a problem, and a huge problem, actually, the way also we try to approach things, usually Sharon and I, when we try to build a company, a startup, we try to really pinpoint real problem that not too many people want to tackle and change. So when you look at different industry, you will see the last mile logistic industry was a big challenge 10 years ago, 15 years ago in the Middle East. That's something we try to solve by building a marketplace to help people, reduce this friction of getting your goods delivered to your doorstep. Because in the Middle East, they have no address. So it's very difficult to reach people through your address because of the complexity of not having a specific location. So anytime when you see a big problem happening in a certain area, certain place, whatever, you as an entrepreneur, you find the opportunity, think around. Of course, most of the time you expose to these difficulties and you try to solve it. So the bigger the challenge, the bigger the excitement actually from my part of history. I like to find a solution to a problem that is massive and difficult to solve. In that regard is more challenging because if you are going and step in as an entrepreneur, building that's something that many other people are doing, you literally try to do it better, compete and compete on better services, localize your solution in a different area, different region, and then you just copycat a certain process and make your startup successful. And that's also a good way. You bring something new to a market and you do it. In the fintech world, first of all, what is exciting is that Islamic finance is growing. Also, the insurance takaful concept is also something super exciting, but really misunderstood by the global community. This sense of community-based support, helping one another, could really be a solution to all the problem modern society is facing. As Shannon was mentioning, removing the middleman, not necessarily the profit. Your company can be profitable, but removing the middleman, putting back this fund to work for the community. So when we saw this exciting fintech solution that could help millions, you needed the right technology and you needed to be there at the right time, right place. Okay. So for example, some of the reinvestment and the money that you usually invest in the fund usually is tied up to government regulated funds, so on and so forth. So it's very difficult to actually innovate because you have to tie up your money, I would say your insurance money to certain institutions and stuff like that. But when it comes to DeFi, or when it comes to blockchain, when it comes to crypto, it's a blank page, I would say, for any financial model, let alone insurance. So you have all these things coming up together as an entrepreneur, as somebody who's excited about doing interesting things that disrupt regulated industry. By the way, I don't want to go into the regulation part of it, but usually when you step in as an entrepreneur in a very innovative space, I always say you will be in a gray area, maybe in a black area. And then the regulator will come and regulate you when the time comes. But if you really want to innovate, you have to be in the gray space, minimum. So this is on the sideline. So when we saw that opportunity, blockchain, decentralized, DeFi, ability to transfer money, borderless, frictionless, with a MetaMask wallet or any type of decentralized wallet, the rise of adoption of stablecoin, when people actually can now send the remittance money to their loved one from New York to Nigeria to Indonesia. It's fantastic. Finally, you have some tools, some technology that exists that actually disturbing the status quo of the finance world. So now you're like knowing what we know as an entrepreneur, seeing the technology and ability to do things. I'm like, why do an insurance or financial product stay hyper local when they can become global and using not the banking rail, but the crypto rail and making it able to do it. Then blockchain facilitate tracking, transparency. When you look at the Ethereum network, the rise of smart contract, the beauty of smart contract is what? For the first time, you don't need a lawyer, you don't need the judge, and you don't need the police. You have a contract that we all agree together that if A happen, B should happen. Imagine the sophistication of doing simple contract. I'm not talking about complex contract, but simple contract can finally be agreed upon and executed. And that's it. So when you see all this beautiful, amazing technology, I was with Sharene when we exited our startup. Brother Tanvir, we didn't even take a break from after selling and exiting our startup. I was telling to Sharon what we discover while handing over our startup that we sold to IKEA. I say if we take a break too long, this technology and what we are upon to do will be obsolete. So we had normally after exiting a startup, you might take 3, 4, a year break. We right away step into building Takadao immediately. So it was really this time and place technology solving a global product, a global issue, and bringing finally Islamic principle based on the new rise of set of financial system that you didn't have 15 years ago. You had to borrow from the traditional corrupted ribawi system that still exists today. And that's, all these things that, and the challenge are multiple. You have thousands of challenge, but as an entrepreneur, you go step by step, jump, fix them, break the world, continue, break the world, continue. And, you don't count the challenge. That's the key thing. You keep on going until everything is settled. That's the part
This
of
is
being an entrepreneur in that space.
Yeah,
this is great,
maybe.
Brother Morrad. Right. So go ahead, Sister Sharene.
Yeah, maybe I can, because he got so carried away talking about what we do. He didn't even actually address the challenges that are being faced. Maybe I can be more specific with the kind of challenges that I face. I think particularly in our space, in what we're doing, one of the challenges is people cannot imagine insurance being something different than what it is, right? Anytime we bring up the idea of this is, I try to avoid saying the word insurance because it really is different from what we're doing. But unfortunately, if you don't anchor it to something, people don't understand what you're saying. But when
If you had to coin a term, Sister Sharene, if you had to coin a term apart from insurance, what would it be? Or have you thought of something?
I would call
That
it
if you,
mutual protection, because that's exactly what it is. We're protecting one another. But so one of the challenges is, how do you get people to see outside the box? Because as soon as you see insurance, I kid you not, people shut down their minds. They're like, oh, they are already turned off by the word and the concept of it, right? So what we have to overcome is that, okay, we're trying to do this in a better way, in a way that is actually beneficial for you. So that's one of the challenges, is the mindset. And this is not only from, let's say, the end user point of view, the member point of view, but from investors, from industry insiders. So when we're recruiting insurance people, actuaries, it takes literally maybe weeks to readjust their brains to make them understand, no, the goal is not to deny claims, it's to tell you, at what point we are. So that mindset, that shift of paradigm is actually quite challenging in our particular context.
and we'll come back to some of this. For our viewers, if you haven't figured it out, this is a power couple. They're both successful entrepreneurs, serial entrepreneurs, significant success in their past careers before they launched Takadao. What year was it that you all started on this journey with Takadao? Was it like right before COVID?
No, actually, it's 2022, so kind of right after
22.
COVID.
It's fairly recent, and then it's very exciting to see you all get an investment round from Tim Draper from Draper Ventures, right? And folks in the blockchain space know him as a Bitcoin whale. He's a well-known VC in the Bay Area, and so it's very nice to see that investment, and I'm sure that's just the beginning, and there'll be a lot more milestones for you. Going back to an earlier point you mentioned, Sister Sharene, what aspect of insurance makes it haram from an Islamic point of view? Is it the speculative nature and the involvement of interest with what the premiums are? Probably those are two big areas, right? But I want to get your
Yeah.
thoughts on that.
So we already established that the idea of mutual protection, which is the foundation of insurance, is not haram, right? A lot of people, the Muslims especially,
That
they're
is
like,
fascinating. I think that is very in line with the faith, right?
exactly.
But
I
I
mean,
want to
it's
talk
like,
about the ones that are not, right?
exactly. So we've established that part is not haram. Now, what is wrong or what is haram about insurance is the way that is being practiced today. And specifically, we're talking about the casino model. Because there are multiple, there's already two models of insurance. There's the what we call the stock insurance company and the mutual insurance company. Now, the mutual insurance company can be Sharia compliant. It depends. There are certain factors, but we'll get to that later. So the majority of the insurance industry today is what is the stock insurance company, the casino model, which is what I call it. Now, why the application of the idea of mutual protection in this format is haram and it is not Sharia compliant for three specific reasons. The first one is the involvement of riba interest. And this shows up in two ways. Number one, the types of investments that insurance companies make. Now, most of them have to invest in government treasuries, bonds, debt instruments, essentially. So that's interest there. The other thing is in commercial contracts, which is what this kind of insurance is. In this particular case, you are paying in a small amount of money as the insured and potentially getting a large amount of money out. Now, this money on money growth is a form of riba as well, according to some scholars. So this is one thing. The second thing is the concept of uncertainty, which is to say, in commercial contracts, once more, you have to have well-defined terms. So you have to know what you're buying and at what price and what you're going to get in return. Now, in insurance, you don't know what exactly you're going to pay because you might pay for a month or you might pay for a year and never get anything out of it. You don't actually know what you're going to get out of it. So, for example, car insurance, if your car has a slight dent or it's totaled, there's a different amount of money coming back. And so it's an entirely uncertain commercial contract. So this is prohibited in Islamic Fintech. Islamic finance, sorry. And the third concept is that of gambling. So with the insurance model, it is exactly a zero-sum game. Somebody has to lose in order for the other party to win. And this is exactly the idea of gambling on maisir. Now, how do you bring mutual protection back to where it was Sharia compliant and is Sharia compliant? Now, you get rid of riba. So this is what we do at TheLifeDAO. And this is what our mutual protection fund is based on. Get rid of riba, first of all, by not investing in anything ribawi. That's easy enough. And the second thing is the intention of the fund is not for profit, which is to say that it is not a commercial enterprise. So the fund itself doesn't generate profit, quote unquote. Any money that is what we call surplus goes back to the original contributors, the people who put the money to begin with. This is now no longer considered a commercial enterprise.
That is only in the event when they need it, right? So they are paying into the system and they will get a payment, God forbid something happens. Otherwise, that pool keeps growing, correct?
That pool keeps growing. But there's also the opportunity of this individual exiting the pool. So in case he's like, okay, my contract now or my term with the pool has ended, I would like to exit the pool. Then he can take back some of whatever the surplus that he is entitled to. He can withdraw that from the pool as well.
And what do you do with the bigger pool? Is that invested in some halal instrument?
Exactly.
Because that has to perform, right? Go ahead, please.
Exactly. Well, let me finish with the Sharia compliance bit, and I'll come back to the investment part. So you get rid of riba in that way. It's no longer a commercial contract. It's not money on money anymore. It's a gift to the fund, and the fund gives you a gift back in case something happens to you. Now, the second point, which is the issue of uncertainty. Back to the idea that this is a mutual protection pool in which people are willingly giving and donating to the fund, quote unquote. That is the intention. It is also not a commercial contract. So it nullifies the uncertainty principle. And finally, when it comes to gambling on maisir, there are now not two sides to the party, to the transaction. It is everybody sharing in the risk together and everybody sharing in the profit together. And so there's no winner and there's no loser. We're all part owners and we're all beneficiaries of this fund. And so that makes it Sharia compliant. Now, coming back to the investments, this is why, so Morrad touched on this very quickly because we were inspired by Web3 and the blockchain as the infrastructure for Islamic finance. I want to say that whatever has come before us to this point in the world of Islamic finance on traditional banking infrastructure and traditional banking rails, we admire the forefathers of this, the pioneers of this, and we appreciate their work. You know why? Because they had to work extra double hard, because the infrastructure on which Islamic finance today is built is based on purely on interest to begin with. So you have to overcome so much in order to get something to be Sharia compliant. So we were inspired when we saw, what the blockchain represented. We were like, this is a new infrastructure for Islamic finance, one that we don't have to keep compromising because interest is everywhere. This is a fresh, untouched infrastructure that we can now build our systems on. So this is why we chose to build this, what is Takadao and what is the Mutual Protection Fund, on blockchain rails. Because we can get rid of the middleman, like Morrad said, because we can use smart contracts to show the world what we're doing and how the fund is run as a whole, and without having control by one single entity or one single company. This is very important. And we can talk until we're blue, but that aspect we call decentralization is extremely important in this thing. Okay, so having said that, now that we're on blockchain rails, which we have declared to be the new infrastructure for Islamic finance, there are lots of interest-free, Sharia-compliant opportunities for investment on the blockchain. Traditionally, it's really hard to find. You have stocks and equities and you have real estate. But in this particular case, you have a bunch of new avenues where you can invest your money, as well as invest in real-world assets like equities and real estate. But in addition to that, you have new products that have come up which are Sharia compliant. This is where we'll place the funds of the TLD. And when I say we, I don't mean we TechADAO. I mean we, the community. Everything has to go through the approval of the community. Of course, at the beginning, we'll set the rules. But then if the community wishes to change the rules, that is up to the community. And this is why the transparency is important, because they need to know what the rules are in order for them to change it.
I think this is a good segue now to talk about the overall Islamic, finance industry. From what I read, and this was, a little dated, maybe a year ago or so. So the numbers may have changed since then. But globally, there's about $4 trillion of assets that are considered Islamic finance. It's a big number, but still a fraction of the overall, the larger market, right? If you look at, there's banks in the United States that have more than 4 trillion, right? Just a single bank may have a lot more than 4 trillion in assets under management. But there's also the fact that in the future, I think by 2050, there's going to be 2.8 billion Muslims that kind of number, right? Well, I may not be fully accurate. 2.8 billion Muslims out of 10, which almost means that 3 in 10 are Muslims, right? And a very healthy middle class, across from Indonesia to the Middle East and other parts of the world, right? And Islam has very specific requirements when it comes to finance. So in a way, you have a captive audience. I think the opportunity is enormous, but perhaps a lot of people in the West don't get it. So I want to get both of your thoughts on this. As why do you think the world should start noticing about the potential of Islamic finance? Your perspective.
Look, you pinpoint something very interesting. Okay, we are the largest community in the world, the fastest growing community in the world. We actually, when you look at Europe in terms of population growth, they're having like a quarter baby per couple, or even not even more than that. Sometime in Japan, it's becoming negative.
Very big problem.
So
yes.
the statistics are there. Now you raise something very interesting. A question that is very interesting. You're talking about Islamic finance, but we have to look at it in a more interesting way. We have to look at it in the ethical finance. Because don't forget, Jewish, Christian, and Muslim, they actually ban all religion, ban interest. Interest is not allowed in all form of religion, particularly the monotheist religion. And it's very recent that the church actually kind of allowing, I would say, riba to exist. Actually, at the time, they were letting the Jewish community manage the riba because themselves, as good Christian, they would not touch it. Okay, and that's historical proof, and that's how they're starting the banking system and all this kind of, and the rise of the amazing Jewish elite in the financial world. They were pushed somehow to do it for the Christian because they didn't want to touch interest. They didn't want to touch interest. Okay, so now you're talking about the Muslim. To my own knowledge, when I look at the Muslim, right now they are catching up. They are not in a position actually to lead anything. They are just worrying about, how do I buy my first house? Should I use riba or not? When I buy my first house, I'm sorry, Sheikh, but I need an insurance, especially when you live in the West. And then I'm obliged to take another insurance. So they actually, themselves, as a community living in the West, they overwhelmed and surrendered by this difficult system. And the funny thing, the rise of Islamic finance, in my own opinion, it comes from the rise of the non-Islamic, non-Muslim people. I give you an example. The founder of Satoshi and the Bitcoin was what? It was the rise of non-Muslim being sick and tired of the failing banking system in America, say we need to find a solution. And they were not Muslim. They were non-Muslim. And they say we gotta have to get rid of injustice. We have to find a system that is fairer, better, and let's get rid of this system. That's one thing. And this is, and actually in the insurance world itself, or the financial world today in America, the people who are the most concerned are not the Muslim, they are the non-Muslim. They're actually gathering together to build up a takaful concept themselves. They say, let's get rid of the insurance system. Don't kill your insurance provider, please, Luigi. Take it easy. No need to go to that extreme. And it's crazy what's happening today in America. So the people are coming together, mostly non-Muslim, saying we are sick and tired. We want a fairer, better system, because as human beings, at the end of the day, there's still this notion of fitra, natural goodness, natural good things you want to do. So what I see happening is that the rise of Islamic finance is starting with non-Muslim, and we don't have enough actors actually in the Muslim space to step in, because yes, it's happening in a Muslim country where you have facilities with Sharia banks, Sharia insurance, but in the West, it's coming from the non-Muslim, pushing the boundary to innovate, to find a more ethical, more inclusive, more. And when the non-Muslim, they discover Islamic finance, they say, wow, we can use this system, we can use this. You see? So this is a little bit to relocate. The Muslims are waiting. I don't know. In the West particularly, I don't want to be critical about, I don't say they are not doing anything. There's many people actually, they were working in the traditional banking system, financial system. They realized Islamic finance product can really solve many of the non-Muslim and the Muslim-alike problem. But the push and the innovation, as I mentioned, come from people in the West really sick of the system and say, I want to change that. As a matter of fact, Tim Draper, when we first pitched the insurance concept that we were building, is like, I want to kill the insurance industry. I'm sick and tired of these people, and we need to disturb this industry. It's not sustainable, You see, that's interesting. So our first check come from a non-Muslim. Can you imagine that? Didn't
That's
come from a
beautiful,
Muslim.
Sharene.
See, so again, this is what I want to restate. And inshallah, our youth, they are proud of being who they are. They don't take no for an answer. And that's inspiring, because what we did ourselves, apologizing, when we meet, or, I need to exit a conference or a meeting because I need to pray. All these things, this is where we went through when we were in America or in Europe. But the youth, they say, you want to hire me? I need my prayer time. And I don't care if you Google or Apple. You want to hire me? I want my Jumu'ah. You want to hire me? You better have a halal meal coming on the table. What we're seeing is seeing that the young generation, they are not apologizing anymore. And that's also exciting. So the combination of what the non-Muslim are coming up, because they're like so upset with the injustice, they overcome that, and they're like, we need a better system. And then you see the rise, and that's why I say it's amazing to see this combination between non-Muslim building on blockchain, crypto, and everything, solving the issue, and then the young people coming and building finally with our great tradition of Islamic finance that we can revive, because Islamic finance has been there, will be there, and will continue to be there. It just needs to be rising up. And that's the rise of Islamic fintech, inshallah.
Well spoken, right? And I'm very bullish about, and I'll get Sister Sharene's take on this in a moment. I'm very bullish about Islamic finance for many reasons, right? I told you the population, the need is there. In Malaysia, we've seen a lot of Hindu, or because Malaysia is a very diverse country, there's Chinese and Hindu people, or people of Indian origin, who are clients of Islamic banks because they like the product and they like the fairness and the performance and all of that, right? So I think that's a great testimony, but we need to see more of that, right? And then talking about sheer numbers, I think the Muslim population, when you look at it holistically, I think that opportunity could be bigger than India and China combined, right? Which I think that itself is huge. And I feel in some cases, I think non-Muslims get it. Right. I'll tell you a story which is not Islamic finance related, but I had a friend from India. He and his partner from Toronto called me because I had been to Hajj in 2018, and they wanted to know about, halal tourism and halal travel and all of that. And it's non-Muslims who are sometimes seeing the opportunity when and quite often when many people in the Muslim community themselves may be oblivious to the opportunity. So I'm on a mission, shameless advertisement of the work we do. So I launched the Halal Money Forum to create that awareness about Islamic finance and Islamic fintech, especially in the West, right? And to educate folks, different stakeholders, whether it's investors or the community at large, about what's available. And then it allows us to put spotlight on the organizations, the entrepreneurs, the executives, and the founders in the space, right? And we do a host of events. We call it the Halal Money Show or the Halal Money Conference. I've had the privilege of you speaking both at a virtual event that I hosted as well as our in-person event in Silicon Valley. And we'd love for you to come back. And we're hoping that awareness will help the entrepreneurs, will help the community. And I think that's a big part of our mission. With that, I wanted to hear Sister Sharene's thoughts on the overall Islamic finance market. My question was, why do you think people should care about Islamic finance?
So, first of all, I actually read somewhere, I was doing research for a workshop that I was doing, there's $13 trillion of quote unquote Islamic wealth. And that's across individuals and institutions. And then the interesting statistic was that out of that 13 trillion, or I can't remember exactly what it was, 12 point something, 9.8 trillion of that is in non-Islamic institutions, right? So I straight away identify, well, there's an audience there.
So
There's
that's in line with the
opportunity
4
there.
million that I mentioned, right? You said
Yeah.
13. I said 4. I think the numbers kind of
Yeah,
make
no,
sense
the
now.
numbers are,
Yeah.
it just depends on who you ask, right?
Okay. Yes.
Likewise, if you look in the insurance industry, you have it's a $9 trillion annual revenue industry, not including the assets that they control. This is just money they
Is
get.
that globally? 9 trillion globally or just in the
Global,
West?
yes. Just
Global, okay.
globally, yeah. Just fresh money
It's
every
massive.
year coming in. It's huge. And from that, Takaful industry or the Sharia-compliant insurance industry is only roughly 20 or 30 billion. So far away from anything. It's less than 0.5% of the global insurance industry. So again, I'm like, that's a huge gap. Now, somebody pointed this out to me the other day, as a matter of fact. It was a non-Muslim founder of actually an Islamic platform or Sharia compliant platform. And he was like, first of all, he said it was very interesting. So his Russian background, I think he's Christian, but he said, look, I've never seen a community which has such strong shared values. Okay. And this is exactly what we're talking about when we talk about Muslims. What community across the globe still does the same thing at the same time every year, or rather, the same thing every day? Prayer 5 times a day. Jumu'ah every Friday. Ramadan once a year. Eid al-Adha, sacrificing animals once a year. What community across the globe, not just in one geographic region or other, still does the same thing, no matter what their nationality, no matter what their race, no matter what their language? They all have the same practices and they do the same thing recurring. I don't think it exists anymore. There's no other religious community which has the same level of, I won't say consistency throughout. There's no social community which has this kind of adherence and this kind of strength in keeping these practices alive. Nothing. It's just the Muslim community. And this happens again, now back to the numbers, to be the fastest growing community globally. So it cannot be ignored. And like Morrad was saying, the other countries are shrinking. At the end of the day, the wealth and prosperity of a country, or what we call progress, comes from 3 things: natural resources, innovation, and population growth. You can try as much as you can to dig the earth, whatever. If you don't have natural resources, you don't have it. You can have innovation, but it caps out at a certain amount because you still need population growth in order to fuel that innovation. Population growth is the single most important thing that will indicate future progress. And today, population growth is among the Muslim communities who, back to the same shared practices, pray 5 times a day, eat halal, fast Ramadan, go to Hajj, sacrifice animals on Eid al-Adha. I don't know how you can ignore this community. So whether it's finance, whether it's food, whether it's tourism, whether it's whatever, this is the community that is going to be consuming for many, many, many decades to come.
I'm enjoying this conversation greatly, and it's nice that we're not just talking about startups and fintech, but talking about faith and our way of life and so many other things, right? Our past experiences. In terms of potential, right? Malaysia is not a big country. I think 40 million people, and for many years they've been have a Hajj savings program. I think it's called Tabung Haji. And many years ago, when I looked at total assets under management, just within where I think a lot of the low-income Malaysians sometimes will spend their entire lifetime saving for Hajj, and that was at 10 billion. And more recently, I looked at it, and it's probably almost doubled, right? So just one country, and not the biggest in terms of population, one product around Hajj savings is well over, like 15 billion plus, right? And if you look at that holistically across, different countries, Hajj savings alone could be a massive industry, right? And then you spoke about insurance, the numbers you shared are staggering. And it's my belief, I'm very bullish about what you guys are doing, because the whole concept of mutual protection, mutual insurance, community insurance, whatever term you coin on blockchain. And I want to switch a little bit onto the blockchain part. I have a few questions around technology and blockchain. I'm very bullish about what you guys are doing because the opportunity is enormous. I see a very qualified team of founders with a lot of passion. I've met you all at different events, and your passion is contagious. Alhamdulillah, right? And so I see, I'm hoping, and I think this will happen, is Takadao becomes like a household name in insurance. It's almost like, back in the day when we had photocopiers and Xerox was like photocopying. People don't say photocopy, they say just Xerox it, or Kleenex for tissue. You want to wipe your face, you have Kleenex. Let Takadao become that household name, right? And not just for Muslims, but everybody to take advantage of this, right? Now we spoke about the size of what do you think we should do better as Muslims to let the world know that this is a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity, right? What should the Muslim community do?
Well, look, it's interesting. Very, very good question. You see the first immigrant in different places in Europe, in America, okay? What they start doing is actually, let's take the case in America. They start actually wanting to eat halal, okay? So it was not easy because you had to deal with a slaughtering house being owned by a Christian or a Jewish, because they had, already those industry and they were taking care of that. So the Muslim migrant usually comes in and is like, I need to eat halal. So what do I do? So he goes to the butchers. The butchers say, okay, this is what we have. We don't have halal. And I'm talking about my own experience when I was in LA. We could not find halal restaurant. We could not find halal.
How long back was that,
supplier.
Brother Morrad, in LA? What period were you in LA?
In LA, it was back in 2000 and 1998, 1995, all
I
this
can I
time.
can relate. It's can bring back warm memories. I came to the US in '97, and we used to live what is
Yeah.
known as the San Fernando Valley. And there was one Islamic restaurant called China Islamic near
Yeah.
Near Montreal
Yes,
Park.
yes, yes.
So we used to
Yes.
drive in heavy LA traffic. We would drive 1.5 hours just to eat halal food at China Islamic, right? And now
Exactly.
fast forward a generation, and now you have so many options. I think in Toronto, you have Toronto, London, New York, Bay Area.
Yeah.
We have so many options, right? And it's kind
Yes.
of, you took me down memory lane more than once in this conversation, but please continue.
Exactly. So you take this example, okay? You have, and I used to have one of the first quote unquote halal restaurant in LA because I was also, trying to buy. As a matter of fact, I started with kasher. Kasher, I could not find halal. I said, let's take the meat of our brothers, the Jewish, because they like halal. They're slaughtering at least. So I started with kosher, which is halal kitab, people of the book, we can consume from them, and then move on to find halal suppliers and so on and so forth. Fast forward, I come back to Chicago. I meet the king of halal now, Palestinian brother, who's now telling me story about Morrad. I built this, having a small slaughtering house. Now we're being the leading halal suppliers of chicken and beef now in America. And what is interesting is that the quality of the meat, the quality of the way it is handled, the kindness that Muslims are giving to the animal when it is getting slaughtered, no chemical. Halal is not only about just slaughtering the animal. The type of feeding you're giving, the way it is brought up, the chemicals that you put it or not. So it's all organic from day one. You know, you have to really look at the best quality. Guess what? By doing that, you attract Muslim and non-Muslim alike. And eventually, the entire industry become halal by default. So when you go back to France now, and I'm sorry to say that to the French people who are against whatever Islamic product that can come out, but you're eating without knowing halal chicken on a daily basis. Because guess what? The halal chicken industry in France has decided to go all the way in with halal. Because when they do halal, you can have the Muslim and the non-Muslim. So you have all this industry actually now shifting, okay, into the halal industry because, you know, you kill two birds with one stone. That's it. And then, so if we were able to do that with just fooling our belly, what about the financial aspect of it? So again, what you will see, it's a movement where people say, I will not bank with you anymore unless and until you have something Sharia compliant. I will not buy a house unless you do it in the Sharia compliant. And you see that happening in California. You see that happening in Canada, in the US. So what's happening? The traditional banking system, they say we need to be at least partially Sharia compliant or fully. And what's going to happen? You're going to see this shift happening. Else what? You're not going to bank anymore. And in certain area in Toronto, you cannot even bank anymore if you completely ignore the rising Toronto Muslim community. Same thing for Vancouver. You will see this happening. Same thing in New York now. So you see that movement. Then with the rise of TikToker, it's the spreading of the halal consuming and not halal consuming is becoming like a wildfire among the youth. So as I say, I have a big belief in the growing youth being more willing to say, I'm not going to bank with you if you don't do that. As I say, the traditional owner of traditional business, whatever it was the meat at the time, when they were doing non-halal meat, they moved completely, allowing the slaughtering house to be completely halal. Because you could not mix both. I cannot bring a pig and a lamb in the same slaughtering house because of economical reason. They said, let's go in completely halal. And why I'm telling you about this funny joke and story, it's because when I was in the halal candy business industry, I went to meet some people in Spain, and I told them I want to use halal gelatin to produce halal candy in your facilities. They told me we need to clean up the entire manufacture in order to do the supply of goods that you want to produce. And it was very costly. And they refused to do it. They say, I cannot do it unless you're okay having maybe 10% of your production still having pork gelatin in your candy, because through the process. So what I did, I went to Indonesia, Malaysia, where they had fully Sharia compliance production line to buy my product. Eventually what happened, the Spanish company, because they were very specific industries, very sophisticated, the gummified candies, like really high tech, it's not like a simple thing. Few years down the road, they decided to go all in halal and using only beef gelatin in their production. So if we were able to move the shift through consuming our product, the same thing will happen in the financial aspect of it, I believe.
I was hoping you would
That's
say
my
that because while you were saying that, I said, hey, this is exactly what's going to happen, right? It was a struggle. It took maybe a couple of decades to have enough halal restaurants. And, for example, if you go to Palo Alto, go to Zareed's restaurant, right? Halal food, but 60% of the guests there are non-Muslim. And they like the product, they like the taste, they like the Pakistani food, right? And I think we should make Islamic finance products attractive, where it's just not for Muslims, but the ethical aspect of it could be a huge draw. For non-Muslims, right? I think we have that responsibility, and Malaysia, I think,
Exactly,
is a great example.
exactly, because by default, the Islamic finance, Islamic concept is actually more community-based, is fairer, is more ethical. It's the DNA. The only word they don't like when you look for the Muslim, if you remove Sharia and you just say good stuff for you, they'll use it. The word Sharia block them. But if you remove any Islamic Sharia, they're like, oh, I love that. I've been like that forever, and I'm looking for that. So maybe it's the bad, I would say branding, I would say, but it is what it is. We have fairer, better, more inclusive product. The only thing it is what? The rise will happen and it will become the default I'm sure, as you know,
Inshallah,
and you're in
inshallah,
a
God
good
willing.
position to do that. Yeah.
I wanted to just, clarify, right? For a layman, right? If a lot of Muslims may not even really understand Islamic finance, at least in the West, and then for our non-Muslim brothers and sisters, right? The things that appeal to me most about Islamic finance, right? There's five things, right? One is there has to be this shared risk model, right? The shared risk model between the lender and borrower, all right, investor or investee. That's number one. Number two is that there has to be a high level of transparency and fairness in the transaction. Number three, you avoid investing in anything that is considered harmful to an individual or to a family or to society. Common examples are gambling, pornography, alcohol, pork products, right? Because if you do the research, there's a lot of harmful things that are associated with eating of pork. So Islam says you don't do business in such products, you don't trade products, you don't trade such products, you may not be drinking alcohol, don't even serve or sell alcohol, right? And if you look at that, that makes it a much safer society because the statistics in the West are so scary. The number of DUIs that are happening just because people are drinking and all of that, right? And here's the beauty of Islam. And again, this show is not about promoting the faith, but I think there's so much of beauty in the way God had His wisdom laid out, right? So no dealing, trading, investing, buying harmful products, right? And then the elimination of speculation. I think a very famous story is during the 2008 crisis. Islamic banks, Islamic finance products did much better. They were not impacted, because you have to avoid speculation. And then the biggest thing is interest, right? There is a prohibition on interest. It's replaced by a profit sharing. Yesterday, one of my friends asked me, like, so is Islamic finance means it's like Qarz-e Hasna, right? It's just like a loan. I said, no, brother. In a lot of cases, it's profit sharing because, it's not like Islamic finance means you just give away money for free, right? That element of profit sharing, I think, is very beautiful. And I know there's some organizations who stick very well to the principles and some not so much. And I'm hoping, like you used that example, that when you started, you said that when there was nothing, rather than just eat a haram product, let's at least start with kosher and then quickly, figure out a way, right? That you do you do it in a humane way, right? You do the slaughtering in a humane way and make that product halal. So that was brilliant. I'm eager to hear what Sister Sharene has to say. What your thoughts on what should the industry do or what should we do to educate people, around Islamic finance, especially in the West.
So I don't know about necessarily educating, but I think what can be impactful for us generally for Muslims, and I go back from a community angle, is for us to first actually embrace the products, right? And I'm going to tell you a story that's going to kind of upset a lot of people because of the current political situation and the genocide that's happening. I recently heard this story from actually an Uzbek brother that we met in Qatar. And he was telling us, in the late 90s, the Bukhari Jews started to leave what is now modern day Uzbekistan. And they went either to Israel, they went to the United States, they went to Manhattan, mainly, New York. And himself, in the 2000s, as a student, he went to New York for school, for university, and he met these Bukhari Jews, right? Because, they all come from the same area, they share the language, the food, etc. And he explained to me, he said, that community, every time somebody new comes from that part of the world into New York, that community would actually support this individual. They'll find him a place to live, they'll find him a job, and they'll settle him in every way and get him up and running. And the expectation is once he gets a job and he is able to, he will contribute some percentage of his income back to a fund, which is then used to do the same thing and to support newcomers in the community. And this is why they are powerful today. It's a huge community in New York today. And I think many of them are, leaders of industry in the US. Now, this brother was like, I really hope that we can do the same thing for Muslims. And he told us the story on the basis of, I really like what you guys are doing. This idea of creating this community fund where people are helping each other and then using it as a platform to create prosperity and wealth within the community. And this is what I think we need to do. We have to go back to that aspect of we can all prosper together. If we just put all our resources in ways which are, first of all, Sharia compliant, we will have barakah. It will benefit us as a community. It will help us grow, and we're going to get stronger. And to Morrad's point and to your point, we're going to be the dominant mode of things, the way things are being done. And then naturally, this industry is going to grow. We're not going to find success by trying to, quote unquote, convert others to our cause, just by ourselves embracing what we're doing, believing in it, and then actually using the products, and then, keep developing, keep building on them. That's how we're going to find the success. It's going to have to come from inside. It's going to come from within our community first.
Inspiring words, very, very nicely spoken. Now I want to shift to one of my favorite topics. Well, Islamic finance is a favorite topic, and so is blockchain. When you decided to do Takadao, did you even consider like, hey, could we just do it as a traditional startup without blockchain? Or, you thought blockchain was probably ideal, or it was just that, hey, I don't think we could do it without blockchain? What was of the three scenarios? What was your thinking?
I will start and maybe Shane will add on that. So you see, one of the biggest challenge with mutual concept, even like French, for example, insurance model, and even in America, we have the biggest mutual fund. So they are not purely insurance as a fully for profit. They are managed by a mutual group. But eventually, there is opacity in managing the fund. There's opacity in the interest of the stakeholders, and they become huge and massive. And you, as a community members who join the mutual, if you raise concern, you get cancelled, you get deleted. They pay you, and barely you see cases where people are winning against the mutual. So I think like a couple of years ago, I heard like a group, a class action come together, and they finally dispersed $60 million, which was a peanuts for them to make them be quiet, And then eventually they remove them from the mutual. So what's happening is that they have no sense of transparency. It's all opaque. They make decisions as they wish. So what we wanted to do is to find a solution, first of all, trackable, okay, where every single action and transaction can be traced on chain. And we wanted to offer a fully transparent visibility to every single individual. Not only that, imagine having an army of accountants, because when it comes to a concept of community-based, and particularly takaful concept, is the redistribution of a fund being given back. If the fund is not used during the year or after a certain time, the fund should be going back to every single individual at the pro rata rate that is supposed to be given to. You will need like an army of accountants to do that, and usually even the traditional takaful concept in Egypt, for example, they had a big issue, is that the takaful leaders, they say, well, we don't know how to redistribute the wealth that has been accumulated in the takaful fund at the time. So they had to just do a write-off and make it a donation on the behalf of the people who contributed. At the end of the day, the people who contributed, they say, hey, this is our right, this is our money. We want to know how much was it, what you distributed, and all this kind of thing. So it was, again, they were unable to do it. Not that they didn't want to do it. It was difficult. So now you have the technology like blockchain, smart contract. You can see live what's happening. You can actually pay the community back what they do. And because you're on the banking crypto rail, our crypto rail, because you're on, the fractionalization is very easy to do a fraction of a payment in a very cheap way, very easy to send money. Signing the contract, you don't need anymore like 2 or 3 people to sign the contract, and you have a 50-page to sign and stuff like that. Impossible to do with a smart contract. You're done in 10 seconds, this contract is issued. So all this automatization, easiness made it the best tools, and in order for you to be as transparent as possible. Now we go to the DAO structure, decentralized autonomous organization, where people have the right to vote, and they can elect people to vote on their behalf. And all this, how can you do that? And how can you be transparent without this technology? Okay, and that's a must-have for what we're building. Because I don't want to have no liability in the sense of taking decision for the community. Takadao is just an enabler, building the technology, and I want to be out as soon as possible. I visited Malaysia, and I met the father of Takaful. He's now above 80, 85. And I explained to him that, we use blockchain, we use smart contract, we use decentralization, we use that. To be honest, he was lost with the word. Like, okay, you lost me. But one thing that I understand is that You don't want to collude. You don't want to be doing something yourself as a takaful manager or wakil. You want to make sure that is really decentralized, like that there's no conflict of interest. And then the takaful go back to the origin of doing what it's supposed to do, being fair and transparent. You see? And that's why it's like what you're building, it's exactly what I thought I wanted to build back in the 1980s, you know? And he's considered the father of takaful. So this is what technology does today. And again, Sharon, if you want to add up something on that would be great.
Yeah, so I wanted to immediately say no. I would never have done this had it not been that the blockchain was available for us to build on. Because I don't think we
No,
can
you're saying that
build.
you wouldn't have done it without blockchain. Is that what you said, Sister
Correct,
Sharene?
yes. I don't
Okay.
think, and I don't think, I am sure it is impossible to build what we have built using Web 2 technology. Now, just an anecdote, we are, multiple time founders, and we exited our last company. And when we started this company, we actually went to talk to some of our previous investors, to raise funding for the company. One of our investors told us, if only you were building this not on the blockchain, and you strike this word cryptocurrency and you strike this word Web3 out of your deck, I will fund you. But we were like, this doesn't work. You cannot do this off the blockchain.
I think they made a big mistake, but they'll figure that out in the near future.
Whatever. Alhamdulillah. But here's why. Now, first of all, the goal was always to be, okay, we want to rebuild this community, right? We talk about community, and who actually needs to be in this community are the people who are the most vulnerable. And the people who either they're, in my mind, systematically discriminated against, either because of geography, because of income, or because of Sharia compliance, so belief system, values, etc. And this tends to be global in nature. And you cannot build anything global on banking rails. It's simply impossible. The regulations will kill you. In each country, you're going to spend like tens of millions just to handle the regulations for that specific country. You can never go global. And the blockchain allows you to do this. Web3 allows you to do this from day one, because crypto has no borders, right? So that flow of value can take place seamlessly without you having to deal with banks and cross-border payments, which are very costly, by the way. So we wanted to address the global population of disenfranchised, among whom a lot of whom are Muslims. And you cannot do that on Web2 Rails. So that's number one. And we wanted it to be inclusive. And that means being able to build it for the unbanked and being able to build it in a way that is affordable, so that people traditionally cannot access these financial systems can access it. And again, you cannot do this on Web2 Rails for the reasons that I've already explained. Now, that's just like practical reasons, right? Going back to what Morrad said, which is really the core of what we're doing, is in order to change this paradigm, to shift from a casino for-profit model of insurance to something that is community-based, we need absolute transparency, number one, and we need a model of governance that is unassailable, meaning a model of governance that nobody can break, that there isn't this centralized authority who can do all kinds of stuff behind the scenes and manipulate the situation. And again, with Web2 technology, you cannot create that level of transparency and that governance structure, whereas you can do this on Web3. He brought up the story of the Egyptians, which I wanted to talk about as well. He's stealing my talking points. It's terrible. But the Egyptian government had a takaful fund. A couple of years ago, they declared, okay, there's underwriting surplus, and we need to distribute the surplus to the members, normally by takaful regulations. However, we've lost track of who gave what and when did they give and how much do they own, etc. So we're just going to give it to charity. Now, the members were obviously upset. They were like, this is, first of all, not the Sharia way to do this. But okay, you give it to charity, no problem. But anyway, it's supposed to be for distributed back to us. Now, what was lacking there was technology, pure and simple. They needed a system of tokenization in order to track who owns what. And that already exists in Web3. And that's exactly what Web3 does. Again, in a seamless exchange of value way. And that missing piece there was simply technology. I give you another example of governance. Now, we touched on this a little bit earlier, but you have the casino model of insurance, and then you have the mutual model of insurance. Now, people will say to me, well, what's wrong with the mutual model of insurance? Aren't they supposed to redistribute surplus as dividends back to the policyholders anyway? And in fact, what happens is even that is corrupted because the technology that they are using has corrupted it. Why? Today, the mutuals are run by for-profit management, which essentially controls everything. If you go to the board of directors of a mutual insurance company, you will not see a director that is there representing the policyholders. You would just see a board of directors that represent the shareholders.
So, Sister Shariah,
Yeah.
can we say that pretty much mutual insurance is dead in America or almost dead?
Well, they are increasingly demutualizing, but this information I'm talking about is actually come from a Boston Globe article, and I'll send it to you so you can read and you can maybe share it with the listeners. But the idea is that the for-profit management, by the way, I misspoke earlier. I said on the board of directors, they only represent the management and they do not represent neither the shareholders nor the policyholders. So what happens is they create high compensation models, high levels of compensation for the management that are obviously tied to the, profitability of the fund. So you end up having a mutual model that's driven by profit incentives anyway, meaning let's deny claims. And the individual policyholder who is supposed to have a vote isn't able to properly organize because they don't know who the other policy holders are. And there isn't a platform for them to discuss and to group together and, to do shareholder activism. Impossible. And it is also that kind of relationship where they're in and out very quickly. And there's no visibility. And so in that model, it's broken. So if you want to reform that model, you have to come back to what Morrad was talking about. Absolute transparency, a form of tokenization that actually is actionable, meaning I am a token holder. I can therefore vote with my tokens. I can sign transactions, etc., in a visible public way while still protecting my privacy. You cannot do that on Web 2. I'm getting very technical, but the upshot to this is that whatever we're trying to build today, which is the mutual model of the past, but with the context of today, cannot be done on Web 2 technology. And that's why it wasn't. And that's why we can only do it today. And this will only exist because the blockchain exists.
Very well spoken. And I think this is a perfect use case for blockchain. I would love to have you all back for a follow-up conversation where you can get a little deeper into, Takadao story and, what's planned ahead and all of that. And we'll talk further blockchain as well. I had so much fun on this call. I quickly messaged someone saying it's 10:15 now. I said, I had a call at 10. I said, can we push that out? Because I was really, really enjoying this conversation. As we're getting ready to wrap up, I wanted to get a sense of what are a couple of big milestones you guys are looking forward to achieving in the not too distant future for Takadao? Anything that you could share publicly?
Probably I'll go first and then Morrad can wrap this up. Really, I'm so inspired by the idea of community and the idea of us getting together and really uplifting one another. So our official launch, so we're currently in what we call the pre-join stage of TheLifeDAO, which is the stage where we need to accumulate as much funds as we can in order to launch the Community Protection Fund. Now, if this was an insurance company, there'll be shareholders, they'll put money, and khalas, they start the insurance fund right away. But because this is not that kind of a setup, we actually need to get this money from the community and from the pool of members themselves. So it takes a little bit of time. However, we're getting very close. Inshallah, we will launch, the planned launch is June 15. So this is the big milestone for us, to get in roughly $500,000 into the fund and to get in roughly 5,000 to 10,000 members into the fund and to really kick things off. What we'll kick off with is really two things. One is the protection, the mutual protection. So when you come in and you become a member, first of all, you are part of this network, all right, which has your back. As with this network comes with an education on how you can, first of all, allocate some of your investments into Web3 crypto, of course, relevant that to ethical and Sharia-compliant investments. So you get the education piece, you get workshops, you get one-on-one consultations with experts. In addition, whatever you pay in membership fees actually goes to the Mutual Protection Fund, which takes care of the members' families in case one of the members pass away, yourself included. And that is the basis upon which we will launch. Coming soon, very shortly after that, we will introduce the TheLifeDAO card, which is actually a prepaid crypto payment card. So you can spend your crypto like cash in the real world. And then subsequently, we're going to add on a savings and collaborative investment pools for members to, again, collectively invest in different digital assets which are, again, Sharia compliant and have different risk appetites. So these are all these things that we can do. And hopefully, inshallah, bismillah, if everything goes well, we're going to find a membership that is going to grow together, both in wealth and in security and in knowledge.
Beautiful. This is great. Our best wishes to you. Brother Morrad, anything you want to add from your side?
I mean, she said it all, I would say. But just to add up, look, the basis of the communities is, as I said, is a protection fund. The fund is also actually will be a sprinkle effect on every single Islamic product that are being launched and try to because we know that in the Islamic industry, there's so many musharaka, mudaraba, and everything. We can really help. Eventually, the fund can also be invested in a very great project that many brothers are building. So it's not only just a protection fund, it's also being able to support eventually when the fund become larger and want to de-risk helping some of the great entrepreneur and great projects are happening. So my call to the community, we've been struggling to get sustainable product, Sharia compliance product, bearing our debt in a decent and noble manners, because don't forget, taking care of the burial of our dead is a fard kifaya, is an obligation on every single Muslim to wash the body, to bury the person and pray janazah on them. It's not, no money can buy. You have to do it. Don't tell me you need $20,000. If you don't have the $20,000, you have to do it no matter what. We cannot leave our brothers being burned and stuff like that. If you're too lazy to do that, join the fund. Let the fund take care of it and pay the burial company to pay decent wage, good wage to people to do the job. Let the fund take care of buying land for your brothers to be buried. As a Muslim, you don't have time, you have cash. And I repeat to you guys, the fund is an obligation on you to do it. So what I'm saying is that you're a leader in your school, you're a leader in your masjid, you're a leader in your association, you're a leader in that. You should just not let amazing projects like that have a real impact for the community just go like that. I don't say, oh, I have enough money myself, I can take care of my. So you're not part of that community anymore. Oh, I have no time for that. Oh, I have this non-halal alternative. I have this. What I'm saying to everybody listening to what we do is join the fun, join the goodness, and take care of your community. And by the way, what I see a lot also is non-Muslim actually joining without, even questioning. They're like, wow, that's good. I want to be part of that. So we're not only doing something good for our community, we're showing to humanity that you also welcome to the goodness that Islam is able to give you, all of you guys, And during the time of the Sahaba, the companion and everything, actually the minority, they were so happy to live in those Muslim land because they were enjoying the goodness of what Islam was giving them back. And that's why they were happy to be under the ruler of the Muslim at the time, because of the great thing that they were enjoying. And that's what Islam is all about, these beautiful things. They're happy. So again, talking to all of you guys, I was so happy for this opportunity, Tanvir, to explain what we're doing. I know Sharene has a more academic way of presenting things, and that's why she's in black, I'm in white. We complement each other, and I welcome everybody, inshallah, to reach out. And I really appreciate Tanvir's work to build this beautiful channel to communicate about the greatness of Islamic rise of Islamic finance as well. I'm happy to be part of this podcast. Thank you again, brother.
The pleasure is all mine. I'm moved by because your startup, your fintech startup, Takadao, has such a strong social impact, right? And I have to tell you this, not to patronize you guys. Some of the entrepreneurs that I know have also mentioned to me they're very motivated by the two of you, right? And even your son, mashallah, I met him at TechCrunch Disrupt 2 years ago. 2020. I was so impressed with him. And actually, I saw him again at last year's consensus. Such a grounded kid, confident, but still humble, great reflection of the two of you. So my best wishes to you and your family, everything you're doing at Takadao from the Halal Money Forum side. We want to help you in creating that awareness. Our best wishes for you to achieve that milestone mark. We'd love for you to come back and share some success stories, talk a little more about Takadao and everything else. I would love to invite you back in the very near future. But until then, best wishes to travel. Both of you travel are all over, right? It's amazing. Riyadh is your home city, home office, your official residence, but you're all over, and you talk about not just Takadao, but you talk about the whole industry. So really appreciate that. I greatly enjoyed this conversation. We'll put it up, in a few days. I'll get you the recording, and also if you could share a couple of videos that we could add as links. If there are a couple of videos on Takadao, I'd love to include that as well. Any final thoughts, before we wrap up? Any final message for the listeners?
I just want to say that, mashallah, you've been doing an amazing job to educate the community and putting people together. And I witness physically also you show. What I would love to have is having this halal money show one day coming back home in Medina or Mecca to bring all the great brothers and having an edition back to the kingdom. That would be something that we're looking forward to, inshallah.
Inshallah, yeah, I would love to talk offline about that. Right now, focus is North America because there's so many cities we have to go to. I do want to end with this. November, we are planning back, like how December you had come down to the Bay Area, the two of you. Really appreciated you all joining us at the Halal Money. It was our first big in-person conference, the Halal Money Conference in Silicon Valley, December 7th. We're going to do that again in November. And in September 13, 14, we're going to do one in New Jersey and New York. And I also have Toronto and Dallas planned. And then there'll be a series of online events. And yes, we would, wherever possible, we'd love for you to join us, inshallah. And we would like to be with you in this journey to create awareness, and may Takadao become a household name, inshallah.
Thank you so much. Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much, Tanveen. Enjoy your day, and thank you again for having us.
Thank you. Thank you
so
for joining
much.
us.
See you
My
again
best wishes
soon.
to you. All right. Yeah, I look forward to it. All right. Take care.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam. Bye-bye.